Thank you for tuning in to Andronetalks Radio, gathering as one in our sovereign truth from a galactic perspective, exploring our world with new ideas, knowledge, and a promise of a better future. Galactic discussions for galactic-minded people. Andronetalks.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us at Andronetalks. We have a very, very powerful discussion today. We're going to talk about the fires in California. And I'm going to list a whole bunch of things that this is related to, and just for so many different topics, all coming together as one. It's mind-boggling. What does this have to do with the California high-speed rail? Does it have anything to do with the caravan? Is this related to Jade Helm? Agenda 21, martial law, depopulation. What about the Dew's smart meter readers? The unsealing of the indictments for Podesta, Hollywood sexual accusations, an offshore alien civilization off of the coast of California, specific celebrity homes that are not affected by the fires, the Umbrella Group, and unfortunately the list goes on. Is this AI? What about the Yeti lizards that Peter the Insider talked about? We're going to get into these discussions with two testimonials and some observations from Dr. Jeanne O'Dean, PhD in quantum physics and etheric quantum hexadynamics, and also Laura, who is from San Fernando Valley in California, as well as we have another witness, someone who lives in California, has seen a lot, and her name is Chris. Laura and Chris are going to, because they would like to not be named their full name, but they are going to share some of the information of what they have experienced. So everyone can, you can just mute for a second, and I'm going to read through an interesting message from Chris. This is her testimonial. So Chris shared with me a bunch of info for me to sift through. She said approximately a month ago, she observed a series of transport vehicles loaded with military tanks moving over Highway 154. One transport was stopped on the side of the road. There was a significant amount of chatter over the last 2 days about a military operation called Hot Musket and another called Operation Dragonfly. This is when she told me that the military personnel that she was aware of locally, she is residing near a military base, and the military personnel who had been on leave and inactive militarily are being called to duty to a domestic operation called Hot Musket. They are to report to Texas, some on the border, and then some at a base in Lubbock, Texas, which is north. What I have heard, she said, about the Lubbock base is that it became a site where energy weapons have been in production for a number of years. Some military personnel have reported seeing tanks in Mexico in the area of Tijuana. The tanks are brown with stars on them. They are presumed to be either Chinese or Russian or both. No one really knows for sure yet. Some say that this is what the Jade Helm military exercises were preparing for. Some are hearing code REX, R-E-X, 84, which is supposed to mean martial law. So I'm still reading the testimony of Chris. She said the recent fires in California have a number of strange facts around them. PGE was notified about the sparking equipment the day before the fire started. No one came to check or fix the equipment. When the fire started, they exploded into fierce, fast-moving blazes. Very little warning was given. In Paradise, I personally have traveled through Paradise when I went to visit Chris. She said that the Paradise was a community where many poor elderly people lived in a trailer park. It is estimated that most, if not all of them, were burned in their homes. The news reports over 1,000 people missing, only confirming 100 or so dead. Also saying they would probably not be able to identify most of the dead. The fire was so hot it incinerated everything. The fire in Malibu is near Point Mugu Naval Base, which is the area where the ET base is said to be in the offshore, in the ocean just off the coast. Many people have seen UFOs fly in and out of the water there. The fire in this area was started by a directed energy weapon. It burned a Superfund site with nuclear waste that had not been cleaned up. The radioactive material burned and was carried off in the smoke. And then she said she'll continue to send more information. After reading this testimonial from Chris, I know that Chris is a person of integrity. She also is one to communicate with others. And in the end of our conversation, she shared with me that she and some of her neighbors have a plan of action in the event that something happens, which seems to be very suspect at this point. So I would like to bring in Laura now for Laura to share some of her experience of what she just went through. I know that we've been communicating off and on about this for a while. Hello, Laura.
Hi. Hello to everyone. About 2 weeks ago, I smelled fire, and there was no fire. And I smelled it as if something right next to me was burning. And then almost a week later, the fires start. But they weren't normal fires. I've never seen fires like this since I've lived in California for 48 years. And first it started off with a mass shooting at a place called Borderline in Thousand Oaks, where young people in their 20s go. My daughter went there when she was in her mid to late 20s. And thank the God she lives in San Diego now. But there was that, and then the fires. And the way the fires burned, there was something so unnatural, like it manufactured about it. And before all these events, I take notice of the chemtrails. There's still a lot of chemtrails right now. I don't know if they're covering something because you can't see past them. But the chemtrails have been laid out now for weeks, every day for weeks, which is affecting everything, all life here. And the fires, it was really kind of scary because there's the fires there. Then when they started putting those out, there were spot fires, like all of these distractions. It's just incredible. The loss of life, the loss of wildlife. There were 3 or 4, I think 4 mountain lions that were collared. And one of them, they found one of them, but they haven't found the others. And it's just an unconscious attempt to destroy. So.
You've had some respiratory issues, and this has gone on. There was other fires that have happened in the past.
The fires last year in August, when the whole valley, because I live in a basin, and we were surrounded on 4 different sides by the fires, almost like deliberate for the people here. And there was a lot of people going to the hospital. I myself went to the hospital, and then we realized, because I called you, I said, something's weird here. And we realized one of the scoundrels, who was Dionysus, a.k.a. Leonard Crumb, who was starting fires in the parallels. So we dealt with that. That took a while to deal with that, and that helped. But there's so many different sources of the fires. I saw on Facebook where there was a helicopter burning, like a pole on it, on the side of the helicopter with fire coming out of it, like some kind of, I don't know what it was. I've never seen anything like that. But we haven't been in a drought. It's been 2 years and we have not been in a drought. Last year we had 216% over the normal rainfall, and there is no drought. When you see the pictures of all the forest, it's green, and over in the beach area, they get a lot of moisture. They get a lot of moisture because they're near the beach. So all those trees, all that brush, none of that was dry. None of it has been dry. So there was some kind of accelerant, something that was used to start those fires. And they just kept going and burning so fast and furious. I think 3 people died in that fire. And the loss of all those trees and all the wildlife and the domestic animals, it just really, it's sad. So I want to go after the scoundrels now.
Yeah. So there are a lot of people who are unaccounted for at this point. I mean, we're talking a massive loss and heartache. It's a beautiful, wonderful state. And it's heavily targeted at this point from all different angles. And I can't help but be filled with sadness and anger at the same time that something like this is happening. You realize that the people of California, they're organic. They love the earth. They're wonderful people. They think outside the box. I could see why they're targeted, because everything that's dark doesn't want that to exist. And so we're going to get further into our discussions of some specifics. And Laura, is there anything else that you'd like to share before I bring in Jeanne?
One of the things that I noticed with all of the, they're like robots, all the news people, because they say the same thing. We've had a drought in the last 5 years, and we haven't had a drought. And the programming, there's so much programming to distract people. And I think there are more people that are waking up. I have clients, I'm a counselor, and some of the people surprise me with some of the things they tell me, like they're opening up. And I'm just praying that people open up quicker, just quicker. And then I'll help them stabilize. But to open up and work with the consciousness of many people instead of just a few people.
Yeah. You and I have been working on this for a while, because you contacted me when you had respiratory problems, and we asked for healing, we asked for protection. When the fire was getting close to your home, we put a shield around you as much as we could energetically.
That helped too. The shield helped, because this is my station here. I'm holding the fort, so to speak, here. And so I'm attacked a lot in a lot of different ways. And the fires just attack everything. They just attack everything, destroy life. And it's sad watching it. I feel very sad about it. And I feel angry too. So I just want to do something. I want whatever I can do with my skills and my gifts. I want to do something. And work with others.
Laura, you're an intuitive, as I am, and you do what you can to help the planet. And some people are here to hold the space. Many people are here to, anyone that's awakening is here to hold the space, and there are those that have been doing it for a while, and you're one of them. So I appreciate all that you do, and the people of California and those even across the country, that we don't want this to spread any further. Whatever is going on, we want it to stop. And we want to, hold the ground for if they come out, if they disassemble the U.S., then they'll disassemble other nations. We're not the only ones.
Right.
This is not a normal targeting event. And this is not just one nation against another, and there's not a clear-cut good and bad here. There is money, there are other agendas, and with that said, I'm going to bring in Jeanne, and let's see, I had it on mute. How do I unmute here? It's giving me one option, and that's remove from call, and I don't want to do that. Hi, Jeanne.
Hi, Jessica and Laura. And first, I want to apologize in advance if you hear dogs barking. It's beyond my control, but I'm trying to be in a quiet room, so hopefully there won't be much disturbance.
Well, let's go for it.
In Laura's testimony, having lived in Southern California and the Four Corners area, I've also experienced some fires. So I know the health hazards and especially the forest destruction as well as the animals. But as you indicated in your first list, Jessica, this is so much deeper and darker with all these Agenda 21. A war is definitely a war of the worlds. So yeah, I'm not an intuitive like you and Laura, but I'm a researcher and applied both my doctorate in education, my scientific research working for the EPA as well, and then the quantum. So yeah, if I can part some of the data I've been researching since then, I'd be happy to share this. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you perfectly, and thank you. I want to bring up the whole thing about Jade Helm correlates perfectly with what the testimony of Chris, how she brought up that they went from California to Texas, and if you look at the map on Wikipedia, they'll actually show that whole region, and it goes directly. Texas is the last state as you're moving east. So I think I found that to be very interesting, but some people don't know what Agenda 21 is or Jade Helm. Maybe a quick overview of some of this information, and if you want, we can go down the line, Jeanne, or if you
back up on the Jade Helm. People, both Texas and California were definitely target major areas of exercise. You've got to realize that California is a republic as well as Texas. So they can, separate from the United States, they can declare their sovereignty, being republics as well. And, we know Texas being right on the border, and you mentioned the tanks there. There's been a lot of sighting of Russian and Chinese all the way up into Colorado, during that whole Jade Helm exercise. So they've already embedded themselves. They're not just on the Mexican border, southern border, but the caravan definitely has impacted it too, to a greatest extent. But Agenda 21 now has been given a new name, Agenda 30. But there's a lot of key points to it. It's reduction of CO2. As I shared with Laura earlier in our initial discussion, they want to reduce the CO2, and we know the trees emit CO2. Animals emit CO2. Humans emit CO2. So the destructions, the fires destructing the forest there and the animals and the humans, it's a form of depopulation. But it does get into more of your AI humanoid droids that intend to exist here and move the populations from the coastlines. This is both East Coast and West Coast that are impacted by this. I do want to quickly refer that there has been some, especially with the Paradise, I know that Laura's talking about the Woolsey fire because that's in her San Fernando Valley area. People have done the research. I want to refer to Deborah Tavares' research and others that have indicated that the head of PG&E, that's it being related to the campfire with the Capstone contractor, he's involved also with the Rothschild investment company organization. And so we do know that PG&E, the biggest investors in that, is the Rothschilds. And recently, this last summer, there was a California legislative bill to relieve PG&E and all utilities from any damages caused by fires, by floods, especially after that Oroville dam as well. So the citizens of California cannot sue PG&E.
That is shocking. That is so corrupt that someone can be beyond reach and not be accountable. Sorry.
That just lets you know how nefarious and how planned it is, and how the California government is directly involved. And the state legislature is directly involved with it as well.
What is the difference, and why did they change Agenda 21 to, what was it, Agenda 30?
Yes.
What's the difference between the two agendas?
But it's pretty much, how they changed names
right.
for different things, but it's pretty much the same basic. It's definitely depopulation, but moving all the populations more inland. They've already designated the major population centers where they're going to be moving the population as well. Just go back to Hawaii, the Kilauea volcano, they put all these people on barges. They can't find those people anymore.
Wow.
Those people that were on the barges.
How many people were there?
You're talking about thousands of people.
Wow.
That was the FEMA barges. And we do know with Jade Helm exercise, there's a FEMA camps. So are they planning on relocating the populations to FEMA camps that are more inland?
Wow. Yeah, all right. So that's the whole thing of, like you said, moving everyone offshore. And then there's this other thing, this California high-speed rail that they have planned that seemed to line up perfectly with the way that the fires were going.
Yes, and that's been in the plans, and a lot of people don't realize that when you have that rail system, the railway takes over the land. You're talking about within miles. So that's their claim of the land. And, obviously, Northern California is the breadbasket. All that whole California area is a breadbasket of our food. I do want to point out another thing with the Redding fire that happened earlier that Deborah Tavares brought out too, when she looked at the Shasta County records, that Monsanto, which is now Bayer, had already planned to take over that land that was burned. And most of that land was the organic marijuana. So their plans, from my understanding, with these references, are to grow GMO marijuana crops. So they'll have control over the marijuana.
Absolutely. Why not, right? Destroy everything.
And I know you shared Chris's testimonial in that area, but I also listened to another testimonial on YouTube, and the person did not give their name, disclose their names, but he indicated he lived in Paradise, that he saw activity with Capstone, the contractor of PG&E, 2 weeks before the fire. And also there were drills with the nursing homes, the convalescent homes, hospitals during that 2 week period. And the elderly people were even told to pack their bags for 3 days. So that was in the plans. He also indicated that the city of Paradise had turned off the water I mean, this is his testimony. I can't verify, but the water was turned off for those 3 critical days. And a lot of those fire hydrants they found were just dummy fire hydrants. They weren't even hooked up to the water. He also indicated, because Paradise is right near Oroville Dam, and we all do recall the Oroville Dam almost bursting, and that is where the first gold rush is located. Paradise sits on a hill of gold, and these families have been there for generations and generations, staking their gold claim on as Paradise. So if they remove the families, and if we do end up going to the gold standard, there's a nice hill of gold, and that whole Oroville Valley is definitely full of gold. So I'm sure that Oroville Dam will probably be bursting soon as well. So, there's definitely some nefarious intentions beyond just the poor people that have lost their homes and lives, as well as their memories and the animals and the trees.
Well, then that would also probably include the Black Hills, where there's a lot of gold. If that's their intention and everything goes to the gold standard, the Black Hills have also been, there's been an effort to take it from the native people. Yeah. You know about that, Laura?
Is to reduce the CO2. I mean, we're going to pretty much have fires in most of the forest areas. But Laura, you're being a California resident. My understanding, most of those fires were in California state parks, not federal national parks. Can you verify that?
You know what? I have no idea, but there was talking about the water. There was one point when there was no water. One of the firemen said when he was interviewed on TV that they had no water. And it's like, why not? The ocean is right there. Why don't they have water? And it's just deliberate. I wanted to comment. No, I don't know what they are, if they're state, federal, or whatever. Just, it doesn't seem to matter. Just burn. But on the marijuana, the marijuana that they're cultivating now, because I work with clients who have substance problems, and it is lethal. It is lethal, lethal. These people are like zombies. They don't do anything. They have no motivation. Then when they get clean, it's like they wake up. And so now they're going to genetically modify it, and who knows what it's going to do to the people, because a lot of people are smoking it. It's just, it's like
it's carte blanche, no?
Yes. I mean, it's legal. It's not federally legal. And so they're going to, they control it as far as taking money. I know that they take money. They take money, and the people now are being arrested for being under the influence of marijuana if they're driving. So somebody's making a lot of money in this. But the GMO weed, I'm really concerned about that, because it's bad enough as it is. And what is this going to do to the people? They won't even know, because they're already out of it. They're already unconscious with the substances that they use. And this is just another assault on the people.
Well, when I was living in Hawaii on the Big Island, I was working with a neuroscientist, and Maui Gold is a highly prized marijuana, and most people think it's organic, but because of the volcanic eruptions, the bog, the sulfur is getting into the root system, so it's impacting their cognitive function as well, and that's a highly sought after. Maui Gold is very sought after, but now with Monsanto, with that intent around the Redding to grow more GMO, and most states are now allowing not only for medical but recreation use. So it's another way of depopulating, but getting people sick during it and making money off of that as well.
Right. So, and just to clarify, I mean, it looks like the government's trying to get control of this. To me, something that's being done on a grander scale here has to be these higher level corporations, the ones that Peter the Insider and I have talked about multiple times, and not only myself, but Peter had mentioned to me that the umbrella group was part of some of this, and Jeanne, you confirmed also about the umbrella group that someone had mentioned that in one of the videos.
Yes, Brendan O'Connell, he's Australian, but has been very involved with both the Russian and Israeli information. He just recently released a video. His name is Brendan O'Connell, and he referenced the umbrella group. There is a lot of discussion with California being more or less owned by China, but he's saying it's a combination. The U.S. is getting squeezed out by Russia, China, and Israel. And that umbrella group is comprised of a lot of corporations as well. And Israel's priding itself, as well as Russia, their high technology, and a lot has been stolen from U.S. innovators, patents as well. And it's tied in with Britain because all our patents go to Britain. We think our U.S. patent office, but through Serco, it's being controlled by Serco in the UK. So a lot of this high tech that we're trying to use and help the planet and humanity is being reversed to attack and destroy our planet and destroy humanity as well. So yes, this umbrella group, I highly recommend. I just was referred to him, and he has quite a compilation of years, 10 years of work of doing. And this recent Snowden is definitely showing Edward Snowden for treason and working with both Israel and Russia. And he did initially go to Hong Kong. So I think, it's the three of them. So we're being squeezed by all sides. And
right.
You also mentioned the UK involved, you sense, Jessica.
Yeah, I picked up something from the UK, but that's an intuitive understanding. But when I say the UK, it could also mean we're talking about Mobius, which is one of the those advanced corporations that have been discussed, and they're in existence since the early 1800s, and many of them are highly advanced time travelers. And Peter, the insider on the ACIO, has confirmed all of this information. They're the ones that introduced steampunk. When I'm not just talking about the novelty of steampunk, but the advanced technology that was introduced in the early 1800s. That was all brought in by a group of time travelers who then returned in and were able to supply advanced knowledge and data. And this is where these androids are coming in, and the android technology. People wonder, well, everyone's just so brilliant. They're coming up with all this advanced tech, and look at the spacecrafts. This is all coming from ETs, and to ignore that is foolish. It's absurd. You can't look at certain things without having to admit that there is advanced tech here from off-world, from other species. And so certain groups have gained knowledge. They usually have, their own little private sector, and they have agendas. And their agendas are not in compliance with anything that we consider as law here. They break every law possible to do or experience whatever they want. They can age regress. They're walking around sometimes as 20-year-olds. I had someone contact me today. One of them showed up today. They were in a parking lot. There was no one else parked except for one car of this man. And this woman hit his car, stood there and waited, and insisted on shaking his hand. Very similar to something that happened to me in my childhood. These are advanced, highly dangerous beings that are here, and they do not have humanity in mind or considered. They don't care if we exist. They want to take and do whatever they want to do. So this is, we're looking at these scenarios. How can such insanity be happening all at once? What is going on with California?
Well, I recall your interview with Peter the Insider, ACIO, this last summer, June or July, if I recall, when he spoke of the Yeti lizard and starting fires in Europe and Russia area, and more or less had some kind of coming out of its arm, kind of a torch, kind of almost like a blowtorch, but that he said it survives on fire, like we survive on water. And also you mentioned Alice, the AI Alice also starts fire. So I'm sure a combination of direct energy weapons, the smart meter readers, the Yeti lizard, is coming from all variables.
Well, and there's all these different scenarios. I think I was talking to you, was it Laura? I talked about Pacific Rim. Was it the Pacific Rim?
Oh, yeah, the show, and there was another one called The Uprising. So
okay, so I've had visions of this, and I know this is one of the timelines of what could potentially happen, and that's if we have this martial law issue, which everyone thinks is inevitable. Nothing is inevitable. Anything can switch and turn at any moment. It starts off with certain ones start getting accused. So those that are associated with the corporations are getting pointed out, like the ones in Hollywood for sexual accusations, like Kevin Spacey, for example, and others. They're getting pointed out, and then all of a sudden there's a fire shows up. Well, how is that? These different things, or what's happening with Podesta in the unsealing of the indictments, suddenly there's a problem. It's not a coincidence. It's something that is planned. This is a reaction. It's a knee-jerk reaction of the those that are involved with the corporations. As I said, they feel like they're above the law. They can do anything that they want. If someone is involved with these corporations and they start behaving like them, where children are no longer sacred and they're being mistreated, these corporations are involved in that kind of stuff and have introduced a lot of these ideas into humanity and those people that are in power positions. So when that kind of unfolds and you start seeing people get in trouble for certain things, the retaliation, there's an attack on the population because someone's got to suffer because they get pointed out, and that should not be the case. So the issues are really with the corporations. A lot of people say, well, it's the U.S. government, it's these other countries, it's the EU, it's China, it's Russia. Maybe all of the above are being manipulated to some degree, but I know there's a puppet master and then the puppeteers. And the puppet master are the corporations, and I feel very confident in saying that. So we have all of these things happening. It's not an accident who the celebrities were that did not have their homes burnt, especially when there's a literal ring around them. And like Anthony Hopkins and
Pierce Brosnan
and others. I think it's quite interesting that they were preserved. You wonder, who are they linked to? Who do they know? Obviously, they know the right ones. This puts us in a very, very strange predicament. What are we going to do about it? We can talk about it. The more people understand, the better it will be. The depopulation that has been laid out, I've talked about it multiple times, the Georgia Guidestones. It's right there. They say exactly what they want to do. And if you look at, that whole thing, are we going to comply? Who decides which part of the population is removed? Is it the elderly? Is it certain races? Are there certain, groups of financial, status related, or lack of status, of poverty? Who decides what group needs to be removed?
Well, if you actually do a lot of research with Agenda 21/30, they're focusing on regions, especially the coastal regions. I mean, look what's happening on the East Coast, as well as, with the hurricanes and nor'easters and all of that. I mean, they've anticipated a tsunami hitting New York. I mean, you're talking about foreshadowing. And that's in a lot of movies.
Well, there again, as the lasers are also involved in these energy weapons are hitting the oceans. People have measured the points in the ocean as far as the heat levels. Like, where's the heat source coming from? What is the heat source that's evolving and then creating these weird spirals of events and horrible, horrible storms coming off of Florida? It is evident that the coasts are being attacked.
Yeah. So it goes across any ethnicity and economic status or whatever, because they want to remove it off the coastline. And, I know that Laura's having a hard time breathing, but they're reducing our oxygen level and increasing the radiation level. I mean, humans are not going to be able to exist. It's not suitable for humans, but it's suitable for AIs and droids and humanoids.
I had a vision of a future event, and like I said, it doesn't have to be our timeline. It can be another timeline. But I did see that like a nuclear event, and I still saw people walking around until I realized that they were a cyborg or android. So they can live through anything.
Right.
They can take the consciousness of a human and put it into an android. Although I will say one thing. The consciousness is highly degraded. I mean, you are brought down to a machine as far as actually having a conscience, and because you are fully mind controlled at that point. You don't have full freedom and liberation of free thinking as we experience now, and that's why many of us speak out now, because we can see. And this is not paranoia. This is a fact. We can see what that our voices might not be heard if we keep our mouth shut at this time. It's time for us all to speak up and to say something, and not to hold back and not to be worried about things, because clearly you could be like Chris or you can be like Laura in a situation where you don't know what's going to happen with the volatility of the situation. As I mentioned, there's about 14 different issues here happening in one state. That's astonishing.
Well, and I don't know if Laura witnessed the direct energy weapons, the lasers. A lot of people captured it in video and pictures, but also what she was saying about bringing the water from the ocean. When we had fires on the Big Island, they had big buckets that they would scoop in the ocean and just dump it. So it's definitely disconcerting that they didn't utilize the water to put out the fires in the ocean.
They did to a point, and then they ran out of water in one of the places in right above Malibu, the hills right above Malibu. And the firemen said, well, we ran out of water. It was temporary, but it was like, oh, really? I mean, they were dumping water. They were putting more fire retardant more than anything, and made a circle.
But they could use those buckets just like they did in Hawaii. Take the buckets and get the ocean water. And you said they weren't doing that.
No, the planes or the helicopters suck up that water and they dump it. But then they said they ran out of water, and it was like, yeah, really? I don't think so.
How can you run out of ocean water?
Well, that's what I mean. It's like, are they really thinking we're that stupid? I mean, even in Santa Barbara, when they had those horrible fires there, and then they had the flooding afterwards, they said something about one of the power lines sparking it. There's no way that a little power line is going to spark a fire like that, or even the fires here. And they kind of tried to go around that one too. The lies, it's like there's nothing that you can count on except what your own integrity at this point.
I just want to comment here that I'm pretty positive that, the firemen, the police, everyone, no one they can't express what they're feeling. they're not in control of the situation. And there's definitely something from an upper level that's telling them what they can and cannot do. I mean, ignoring people when the wires go down and all that other stuff going on up in paradise. I mean, that's just purely heartless. How do you sleep at night?
Yeah.
And but I'm sure, like, some of those people probably just walk away and saying, you know, that they know what's going on, and their hands are tied and they don't know what else to do. And I can feel for them too. I mean, it could come down if something isn't done properly. If we don't use our mass consciousness to shift the energy here, we're looking at something very serious unfolding in the U.S. And there's a whole bunch of this caravan, which is very suspect in my opinion. That there's a lot of and this people are going to get angry at me for this, but to me it looks like it's a takeover. They're waiting to come in and take over, and there are others that are waiting to come in and take over with it. They're just thinking that this land is going to be wide open because there's going to be chaos, but nobody understands that chaos is going to spread in ways that you can't imagine. So this is not going to resolve or help anything. And if there are people in true need, they will get help. I mean, something needs to be done. This is off topic, but there's beautiful land in South America. I have no idea what the issue is with people wanting to come up to the U.S. so strongly. It's more beautiful down there. It's less commercialized, and there's a lot of problems that we have up here. We don't have an endless flow of money like people think, and there are restrictions.
Well, and I believe the Bush family and Angela Merkel and the Dalai Lama all have land in Peru that oversees the biggest aquifer, pretty much in not only Peru, but the whole area. So, so destroy the U.S. and then their intention is to relocate in South America, just like, the Hitler, how
the Nazis,
Argentina, the Nazis. Yeah. So, and we do know the Bush family Nazi connection. So, so they know how great South America is. But it's similar to the Muslim refugee migration, the whole open society of George Soros as well. I mean, they're saying he's kind of behind the funding of this caravan as well. Let's see if our military holds off. But to know that, with Jade Helm, there's already Russian and Chinese troops embedded, and we've got the FEMA camps. We're definitely under martial law. We're just not the full tilt of martial law. And that was brought out in the Kavanaugh Supreme Court hearing when Lindsey Graham specifically asked Judge Kavanaugh about the martial law. I mean, after 9/11, we have that. It just hasn't been officially declared by President Trump, but it's looking close.
Well, it's interesting because I just did a show recently with Ian on Andronetalks, and our topic of discussion was related to what the EU is doing regarding bringing over what looks like refugees, but in fact they're military. They're coming over without families.
Right.
And in Sweden, in particular, where he resides, and I have another friend there too, who we went there to help with the energy there because of some of the challenges. And these are welcoming, very, very open. It's an open society and welcoming and very compassionate to those that are downtrodden and having a hard time. And they open their doors to thousands of people thinking that they're helping, and instead those people came in military with I don't know, maybe even criminal attributes. They were raping the women. They were harming these people. They came in, They open their door and they harm them instead. So we want to understand, it's clear that something's going on, and it's a deliberate action of breaking down the societies.
But my mother's full-blooded Swedish, and she's got dark hair and brown eyes. And when you look at history, the Romans, when they came and conquered, they came all the way up there, and that's the standard. You rape and impregnate the women, and so that bloodline, the pure bloodline of the different ethnicities are mixed, and that's just kind of the way of conquering and spreading their seed.
But that's not what they're saying the people are going there for. They're not supposed to be going there to conquer. They're supposed to be going there because they're looking for refuge.
Well, that's what they're saying, but that's not the intent. And
it's obvious what the intent is, yes.
Yeah. Most of the people in the caravan, they're saying, are 18 to 30-some-year-old single men.
Yeah. That sounds like a military. It sounds like an army. Yeah.
Well, and they've held off ISIS and all of that in Mexico and I think in Honduras, so they are embedded because they look, I mean, I can't use the term they all look alike, but, it's hard to distinguish some Muslims from Mexicans because of their brown skin color. They have similar features. So they blend in very easily with the South Americans.
Yeah. Well, they did have some proof that some of that was going on. And like I said, I have some wonderful, I just want to clarify, I have some wonderful, wonderful Hispanic friends, people from, Puerto Rico to Mexico to, whether it's Argentina or Chile or something like that. I know people from all over the world just by being, doing this YouTube channel, and there are wonderful people everywhere. We're not talking about you, and we're not talking about your culture, and we're talking about agendas and the people that are being used to harm others. If you have a group of criminals from another country that want to force their way into a country, I mean that doesn't seem right. I don't care how you look at it, and I think that if anyone's honest, they'll agree. So this has nothing to do with race, because I mean, there's every race, every culture possible in the U.S. right now, and every single one is represented. And there are times when there are issues with prejudice or whatever, but there's not a greater melting pot in the entire world than there is here. And where I grew up 10 minutes away from Harvard Square, very close to Boston. And I was exposed to every type of person possible. There was a woman who was like a grandmother to me who was from Syria. There was, she lived right next door to us. There were people from Ireland across the way, and there was another family that was German. There was a few families that were German. There were some Italian families and Greek families down the street. Everyone, the whole neighborhood. We didn't have any problems. And this is the way America has been for years. So to say that there's any racial stuff, people need to put that aside, see what's actually going on. We've got bigger issues here, and so people need to step away from whatever their predisposition is on some of these things, and look at the greater problem. There are a lot of innocent people that died from these fires, and this is just the beginning unless something stops. And we need to speak out about it.
I heard a fire victim talking about, getting food supplies and clothing. And he says the fire is the great equalizer between rich and poor, different ethnicity. We're all in need. But yeah, I grew up in the Midwest. I mean, we were all unified, but you could tell, these last few decades, it was a divide and conquer, with the whole Black Lives Matter, the Antifa. It was to divide. It's all that divide and conquer.
Same thing happened with 9/11. If people started to realize we'd have to help each other out. This is, like I said, we can call it the elite are behind this. I believe it's the corporations. I believe that people have been mind controlled. I believe that people have been chipped. They're not thinking clearly. They're being used. They're being tantalized with money and wealth. If this world is destroyed, none of that's going to matter. It'll be completely useless. You know, a gold is gold. It's an object. The Anunnaki wanted the gold because they needed the gold, because that's the only way that they could sustain themselves. They would consume it. We don't need the gold. We can survive without it. We need food, but we can't survive with poor air quality. We can't survive with chemical and contaminated crops and contaminated water. This is bigger than all of us. This is no longer pointing fingers at one group. This is something that affects all humanity, and this is something that needs to be addressed now.
Well, they do say that water is the new gold because how precious it's going. I mean, I'm in Sedona, Arizona now, but I did when I worked for the EPA. That's when the Clean Water Act came about, and there've been all kinds of addendums. Now, under a national state of emergency, and President Trump has already declared this through his executive orders. We're under a national state of emergency. With that, the EPA can control every drop of water, every drop in your backyard, from your roof. So it's kind of interesting with what Laura's saying, and other witnesses who are victims of the fires saying, oh, there's no water. So there's the environmental control, which is a factor of Agenda 21 as well. And we do know that Nestle is taking a lot of the water from the Great Lakes and other areas and privatizing it and selling it to us. And that happened in South America as well. So we're being deprived of oxygen, and we'll be deprived of food and water, the basic survival necessities.
Jeanne, can you talk a little bit about the chemtrails? Because this is something that everywhere I go, it's absolutely ridiculous. And
when I first graduated, I had an environmental science degree and public relations. So my first job out of the university was working for the Environmental Protection Agency. So I was very idealistic. I was wanting to save the planet. Like Laura, I have a lot of caring for the animals and the whole planet. So it was an eye-opener at that. Now, during that time, they had regulations for coal ash and, taking train loads from the different coal plants and, burying them. Designated areas to bury them. Well, then it's kind of those sites didn't get any more coal ash. And then people were then discovering that these trains of fly coal ash were going to Arizona, which is evergreen, Arizona, where they retrofitted the planes with these big converters of being able to distribute the fly coal ash through the chemtrails. So this is what we're doing. And I think with what Laura's saying, the toxins, not only hard to breathe, but the toxins are being there. And, you have aluminum, barium. The trees, the foliage have been totally covered, as well as, the nanoparticles of blood is now in part of the chemtrails as well. But I also just heard from Cliff High of Barron, which actually gets people have no interest in sexual desire. So that's part of the depopulation agenda, as well as energy drinks have female hormones in it. So the men that are wanting to be macho, drinking all their Red Bull and all these energy drinks, they're consuming female hormones, plus all the birth controls in the water system. We're feminizing the men. They're losing their gender identity, which was also part of the overall agenda. So
it's the same thing. If as long as we have chemtrails and all of this chemicals are depositing on the land. Even an organic farm is contaminated.
Yes.
So, I mean, maybe they don't have GMOs, but they still have, an overlay of all of this stuff. And, it's like you can't get away from it. And who is putting all of the money into creating these chemicals and putting it all over the planet?
Well,
I mean, that is insane. Can you imagine what that money could do that's positive? Instead, they are poisoning us. And I'm telling you, every single one of them infuriated that they have the nerve to do this and they're not going to get away with it.
But what I'm trying to clarify, they're not creating the chemicals. They're using the coal fly ash. So it's just transporting them to these locations where they have the chemtrail planes, which have been retrofitted. And Evergreen, Arizona, near Tucson, has been a main area. But I mean, it's throughout the world. But what Laura is saying, that she noticed a lot of chemtrail activity before the fires. They're definitely covering up a lot, talking about geoengineering for dealing with climate change. But there's more nefarious reasons why. So yeah, every element that they found with the chemtrails match with the coal fly ash, which was supposed to be buried. So the EPA is just, with the Trump administration, it's definitely downsizing the EPA. A lot of people quit as soon as he became president. And it was, when you say corporations, the EPA was pretty much a front for the corporations for them to keep polluting.
Right. And that no one in their right mind would do that, which leads me to these other corporations and ET species that are manipulating the mindset, if not, like as walk-ins coming in and doing this. I mean, the humans are not that evil. This is mass murder. This is an attempt of mass murder.
Yes.
I mean, you can't candy coat this. You have to say what it is. And that's why I said, we want to put this one and that one on trial. These guys need to watch out, because something like that can happen. We can find out who you are, So.
Well, I think if there's 60,000 sealed indictments just in the U.S., not including the world, I mean, if this is really true, I mean, we're talking about military tribunals for treason and sedition, and they enlarged Gitmo, and yeah, from some of my intel sources, I can't validate it, but they're saying McCabe was arrested, and he's been in Gitmo since January, and then John Podesta is still alive, but his brother is in Gitmo. Also, through your talks with Peter the Insider, those are already cloned. They've been dead.
This is
and
what
cloned.
I'm saying.
So,
yeah,
people
they're
may
cloned.
think,
They're hijacked. They're cloned. They're used, and everyone listens to them and thinks that they're an authority. These, like I said, the advanced corporations have clone centers. They have everything that they need to micromanage humanity. We are already in their minds, lined up for slavery. That's why they want to dumb us down. They want us to be quiet. They want us to sit back, line up, and take instructions, and don't step outside of those lines. We have no idea what the intention is. I have an idea of what they want to do to us. That's why I do what I do. People think, they can say whatever they want about me, but I know enough to be speaking now. I'm not going to wait.
Well, humans have souls. These other beings and entities do not have a soul.
They do not have souls, and some of them were threatening me last night. I had a conversation, and people know I talk. I have connections interdimensionally, and someone was channeling, and they said, "This is what they're saying to you." And I said, "I know. I've been telling people this for a while." And they said they couldn't believe they were hearing the conversation. That they're threatening me, or saying that we're not gonna win, and that they're gonna do whatever they want. And I said, well, they're gonna be sent off world. And not only they're sent off world, and I said, you're going to the Kuiper Belt. I said, that's it. I said, you're going back to Pluto or wherever you need to go. And they didn't like that, and then someone else got attacked today that I care about.
Oh.
So they don't mess around. This is bigger than people realize, and people can say I'm in fantasy. You can call it whatever you want. I wouldn't even waste my time having a conversation if I had to make it up. It is what it is, and I would like to say that none of this is true, and we can just end the conversation and walk away. But it's true. We're in a lot of trouble because it's not as clear cut. The lines are not as visible as we would think. We don't really know exactly who to point fingers to because they're elusive.
Well, I'm going to respond to you from both my education expertise and background as well as my quantum physics arena. I have a doctorate in education. I was in the academic field as well as the business side of it. And we know that education is an indoctrination system, and these new generation of children come knowing they're very highly evolved beings, and that's why they've diagnosed them with all kinds of learning disabilities, ADHD and dyslexia and all of that, and medicating them and vaccinating them because they know that they've got the technology know-how, they remember. And so, they've been targeting these young children, and now they're dealing with the gender issue. These poor children have no idea with the whole gender, and then how schools have been becoming prisons with the killings at the schools. But I know with you and Laura talking about, timelines and the quantum, when we get into our collective intelligence and our collective consciousness, we can shift. That was indicated during 9/11. You had Princeton University that had data points throughout the world with zeros and ones, and they measured the magnetic field of our Earth. And people's consciousness knew, subconsciously, knew that the 9/11 attack was going to happen 2 hours before. And it spiked, because we were all watching TV at the same time. And it spiked. We changed the whole magnetic field of the Earth. So we have that ability with our power, our minds. If we can put all our minds together, we're supercomputers, but that's what they're using the chemtrails too, because with these nanoparticles, they're using our brains as nodes of a supercomputer. So
right. Using us against us. It's so complex. It is absolutely, and they've, we can go into what they're doing with CERN, what they're doing, and with Scalar. They're doing so many different things to try to manipulate and harness our thinking, and that's why I said, now's the time to speak. With the nanocomputers and opening up portals, there are species that are showing up on the planet. According to the ACIO, the Alien Contact, this group is identifying this new species. Not only that, there are alternate species, which means that they're coming from the alternate world, alternate space. These are dark. They're very dark. And that has been unleashed onto our planet as well. So we wonder what's happening around us. There's so many different things. And that's why also, communicating with Peter the Insider, even as bizarre as it sounds, I run the risk of people thinking that I'm completely talking about, this very strange stuff, and Peter is not respected in a way that people understand. He is trying to inform us about what's going on, and it sounds really weird. But then we find out a situation like this that we're going through now with the fires. And he has told us stuff that had manifested. Maybe it takes a couple years before it happens. He has predictions, and he tells us what's going on. And this is direct information from the ACIO, and they also communicate with the Council of Five, which is a group of extraterrestrials that have been watching over the planet since the inception of humanity.
The benevolent.
The benevolent ones. There are benevolent ones and there are dark ones. And then there are our species is here, the human species, and then there's these other subterranean species that have been on the Earth for a long time as well. That we don't necessarily interact with them, but some of us may be communicating with them without realizing it, or being influenced by them. But it's part of the Earth, the organic part of it. And then there's others, that, like I said, we're getting introduced to new species. We're not the only ones in this solar system. We're not the only ones in this universe, in the multiverse. And not to mention the parallels.
Yeah, I remember as a college student at the University of Iowa, I studied physics under Van Allen, who created the Van Allen radiation belt, and in those early years, even before computers, and he just mathematically calculated on the chalkboard, that there had to be a minimum over 1,000 advanced species in our solar system.
Of course.
Yeah, and so, that whole thing about the radiation belt, are we actually going to space in different things because of the radiation belt? But yeah, I mean, you that we aren't the only ones, and we weren't the original ones here with the alien species arriving. Can I just point out, I know that President Trump is right now, dealing with the media that we know it's a major propaganda. I have a degree in journalism, public relations from the University of Iowa, and what people don't realize is the flat screen digital TVs. It wasn't invented by LG or Samsung or anything else. It was invented out of Los Alamos National Labs, who created the atomic bomb, and how they had it all shift over to digital, from analog to digital. So they're embedding subliminal messages in us, and so even if you're watching different news channels or different TV programs, you're getting all these subliminal messages. One incident that became clear to me in my research, it was a couple of years ago. It was in the Denver area, and it made the local news. I don't think it made national news, but I think some channels covered it. But it was a very, really bizarre thing. Over at the weekend, there were a small cluster of young men in an age range, 25, 30, I can't say specifically the age range, but they all had the same name, and I don't recall the name. Let's just say Bill. And whatever, they were probably watching the same program, but whatever that subliminal message was, they all committed suicide. It was over 30 wow. Young men with the same name.
Well, this gets into the Monarch and MK Ultra in the programming that's kind of embedded, and then it's related to triggers.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot more of that than people realize too. I mean, it's time to get educated, everyone. Your weekly TV show that tells you nothing, that entertains you, I think it's time for people to start looking into a lot of information that's out there and the programs that are being used, so you understand when you're triggered, to find out and make sure. I mean, there's people that have been abducted and all sorts of things. So yeah, if people were not embedded with these programs, then the triggers wouldn't work. So, you know, they could be putting stuff in, this subliminal stuff. It's not going to be as effective, but if it's pre-programmed, it will.
Well, and also with the cell phones, I mean, we're energy beings, so they fine-tune the frequency of these cell phones to the point of different ethnicities of these people. Like, you know, when you get a swarm of people like a Black Lives Matter, Antifa, you know, you've got particular races or something. I'm not talking, you know, bashing any races, but what they fine-tune is a particular frequency based on their blood type as well. So it can make a group become volatile very easily, like what happened in Charlotte. You know, it became out of control. So everyone's carrying around a cell phone, and they don't realize that they're controlled by that frequency. So they fine-tuned this already. So
right.
Our cell phones are weapons of mass destruction besides the radiation. And, you know, as a cognitive scientist and an educator, it's just so alarming to see these parents with their small children giving cell phones as a play toy where their brains are still developing. So they're going to be zombies very early in their childhood. And you can't educate them.
Yeah, it's time for us to become educated regarding what's out there, what are the programs that are set in place. And, you know, like I said, it's instead of just getting in and rioting or blaming, which doesn't lead to anything, let's just become informed, be all the wiser, know what's going on around us.
But,
and discuss openly with people about what's going on and learn.
But they planned ahead so a long time. The hippie movement, I found out the singer that's the whole San Francisco. I'm trying to think of the song. You know, flowers in your hair, come to San Francisco. He was a CIA agent who had the talent of singing. So you know how music starts controlling. And you know, they planned the New Age movement, you know, all light and love. So people would just, I'm going to just stay in light and love, and I'm going to ignore what's really going on. So they knew ahead of time. And so and then you've got the sports, you know, they've got all ways of distracting us and not realizing what's really happening to humanity and our planet. But I think the fires that Laura's saying and people are experiencing, I mean, they're definitely questioning now. These aren't normal fires.
No, there was a lot of questions before. And, you know, the conspiracy theorists, you know, like we're the idiots. You know, and it's just like, no, I mean, don't tell us what we see or what we can't see. And some of it is fairly obvious. So the first round, people were just kind of discounting a lot of this, and the second, now you see it all over Facebook. There's more and more footage. People are saying, all right, they don't believe us, we need to provide proof. That's more of what we need to do. This has been the most powerful. Unfortunately, it was after so many people have suffered from these fires. But it took that for people to finally say, hey, listen, look what's going on here. And so many people are talking about it. I don't care if I wish 20,000 other talk show hosts would get on and say the exact same stuff that we're talking about. I wish that everyone would be more informed and just get this information. And then that way we can prevent and help. These are valuable souls. Every soul has a value. You can't say that these people are important over here and these aren't. But if they're hijacked and they're manipulated by ETs and they're being mind controlled through drugs or MK Ultra or whatever, they're going to act volatile. They're going to act dangerous. And we need to break all of that stuff too. We need to set the souls free from all of these constraints. And we need to open our eyes and stop making excuses or kind of laughing at stuff as if it's not important.
Laura, I just wonder if I know you're with the Woolsey fire in the San Fernando, but there was reports of the ones that survived the Paradise fire that, some of these shelters have developed norovirus. So it's just like, here they're total victims, vulnerable, and then they're being exposed to viruses. And, I think people are trying to avoid the shelters and being in tents, Walmart, but now they're being removed. So are you getting any information in your area?
I heard that for the Paradise fire. I heard that recently. I don't know if it was in the last few days about this virus. And it's like the flu shot. I've had to go through hell at work because I refuse to get it. And I can't wear a mask because I suffocate. So I have to go to the doctor every year and get it. And I watch people and they get sick. And they say, oh, well, you must have had something before. And I'm watching them. They were fine before. I haven't had the flu shot in years. So that somehow they're doing something to bring this into the population. Who knows? Maybe the water, maybe the food. Because it comes from an outside source, doesn't it, in these kinds of situations?
What are the symptoms of the virus, Jeanne?
The norovirus, I think it's more of an extreme flu, dehydration. I don't know the exact symptoms, but it definitely was in one shelter. But I was just wondering if it happened in the San Fernando Valley, if there was any reports.
Not yet, but what has been, what they have been talking about on the TV is the, what is it called? It's the virus spread, the Nile virus by mosquitoes.
Zika.
The West Nile virus by.
The West Nile, but there's Zika in Florida. There was, yeah.
Yeah, well, they're saying that there was something in Hollywood or in L.A., South L.A., and if some years back they said horses got it, birds got it, and they killed the birds, and that's how they explained the death of like a lot of birds at one point. This is some years ago, and I thought, yeah, baloney.
I'm trying to recall. I know mice can cause that too. Rodents.
They get the Ebola.
Yeah, but I think it's a virus. I don't know. I can't really say specifically the cause of that. But
some virus in one of the shelters, and well, think about the people and the condition they're in. If these were all elderly people, and so they're already traumatized, and now they're going to do it again with something in the food, probably the food or the water.
Right. Well, I recall the Prince Philip's famous quote, "If I come back again on this earth, I want to come back as a deadly virus and kill all the humans." So, that's a whole nother thing between the fires and everything else is the virus.
It's another assault. It's another.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I guess the song that you're referring to is by Scott McKenzie, in case anyone wanted to look that up.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not. And that's "Flowers in Your Hair" when coming to San Francisco.
Yeah. He's a CIA agent.
Yeah, and also the LSD was brought in by an experiment on our innocent teens during the hippie movement.
Yeah, I was a part of that. I was born in 50, so I was out there in the 60s. And it was Monsanto was manufacturing LSD and passing it out.
Right. Right. Of course, nothing's for free.
No.
So there's always you are a guinea pig. Stop being a guinea pig, people. Open up, wake up. There's another thing too that we need to mention is what about all of these targeted areas that are burnt down to the ground? And we've had discussions about this before. Burnt down to the ground. You know, any type of normal fire usually leaves some type of debris, and I've heard this before, where you see a fire and then some of the metal or some of the the products that we use for bathrooms and tubs and some of the structural elements of a house, the steel, will remain after a normal fire. And we see these houses are burnt down to the ground to nothing,
Yep.
and yet all the trees standing right next to them. I mean, this time, lots of pictures, lots of video footage.
Lots of people came forward with this, with all the videos and the stuff that's being posted. It's like that helicopter. Did you post that or somebody else did on?
I did. I posted it from what someone else said.
Well, you can see it. That's not a movie.
Yeah.
That was a damn helicopter with a long arm with holes in it, like you would spray.
Like crop dusting.
Yeah.
Pesticides, yeah.
One long tube and fire was coming out of it. And it was like, oh my God. But see, there had to be an accelerant. There had to be something else because of the way the fire burned. There had to be something else. And then the pictures of the lasers, that makes perfect sense. Yeah. And then I was thinking, well, what is the source of the lasers? Are they satellites? Are they satellites in space?
It's becoming evident. Lockheed Martin, who's part of the secret space program, has that capability. Yeah, they've been doing laser things, taking out drones and everything else. So people have spotted the Lockheed Martin aircraft as well with that. So who knows? I mean, we've got off-world as well. What's key?
Well, if they're dropping chemicals first, like you said, and then it just is like it becomes a wildfire. If that's the part of what they're doing, but the lasers are something else that people have taken pictures of.
Right, definitely.
And they're seeing targeted heat coming from a source. And like I said, we've seen strange heat sources coming out of in the ocean in the beginning of some of these storms that were hitting Florida. So and you can't see exactly where it's coming from, like I said. So these are some kind of craft that is cloaked. They have cloaking technology.
Yes.
The advanced corporations have cloaking technology. They don't have to show everything, and we have plenty of strange video footage all over YouTube of what seems to look like a cloud is actually something else, or some of it, just looks like a little remnant of something, but you don't really quite know. But it's clearly not a natural thing to observe. But they have, like I said, this advanced tech is something else, and which, I think, the whole concept of the War of the Worlds. I mean, years ago when that first came out, it stirred people. They were horrified. Some of them ran outside to look around. Orson Welles was so convincing when he read through the War of the Worlds. And what was the thing? I think it was there were supposed to be Martians and with laser weapons hitting the Earth.
Yeah.
Doesn't that sound familiar? And someone else pointed that out. I saw that on Facebook as well.
I think the 80-year anniversary of Orson Welles just happened just this past week. I think I noted that from his radio show.
Yeah.
He was like 22 years old when he did that. But I want to harken back because it looks like the fires are hitting, the West Coast, and, we've got volcanic activity and earthquake activity as well. But on the East Coast, that last hurricane Michael, obviously was a man-made or
That was a weird one. Yes.
awful, but it was a combination of direct energy weapon too, because they targeted Mexico Beach and the Air Force Base there. Because the size of that hurricane was over 70 miles wide. And people went and did the wind to verify factually, because they were saying it was going to be 150 mile per hour winds. But the swath of the 150 mile per hour winds was just targeted with that Mexico Beach and Air Force Base, because the town like 10 miles away from the Air Force Base, I can't think of its name, was only getting 40 mile per hour winds. So it was direct energy weapons used under the guise of a hurricane.
Right.
And if you heard the reports of the missing, because they had to scramble moving the F-16s, I'm not sure which aircraft.
I remember that. Yeah. The planes were missing.
Yeah.
How can planes be missing? I know.
Wasn't that the hurricane that got the Carolinas that went so inland?
No, that was the hurricane before Hurricane Michael.
There's been so many, one right after the other.
Right.
Michael
was the one that hit that came from Mexico. Was it from Mexico?
The Gulf of Mexico.
The Gulf of Mexico. Yeah. And the other one, was it Agnes or no? What was the name of that other one that hit the Carolinas?
Some holy name. I'm trying to Joseph.
We'll get it, but I think the point of that storm is, I apologize for not having. We weren't prepared to discuss this part. There's so much information that comes in. The area Irma.
Thank you.
So the way that the storm came in, it was targeted to hit strategically at all of the nuclear plants. That was another one,
Well, and that harkens back to my working at the Environmental Protection Agency, because they were building all those nuclear plants. And my summer job when I attended the University of Iowa was to work at a nuclear plant while they were building it. So I became well versed in nuclear plants. But along that whole New Madrid fault line that goes from New Orleans all the way up to the Great Lakes, it's named after the New Madrid in Missouri where they had the earthquake. They have built 17 nuclear plants on that fault line. So they specifically have built these nuclear plants, so you don't have to drop a nuclear bomb. Nuclear plants are just there, handy. And that ties in with the BP oil spill. That was opening that up, and then you got into the black goo and the whole current that's impacted the whole ocean currents, because it generates out of that Gulf of Mexico going up the East Coast, and that's why you have more extreme weather and the fish dying off.
Yeah, and this is not it's shocking how blatant it is. You don't really have to struggle to find out what's going on. Once you see it, it's so evident. It was almost like we all looked at the rail going up through California and then looked at the fires next to it, and it's like, you got to be kidding me. Is there anything so obvious? I mean, look at the corporation. What corporation doesn't have to purchase? They don't have to purchase any property or land along that way to make their rail.
Right.
Burn it up, right? Oh, they're just humans. We don't have to care. We don't have to worry at all about anyone getting hurt or being displaced. This way, we don't have to pay for it. I mean,
they make money off of people being ill too, and
absolutely.
then becoming totally dependent on social services and government, and that's how they want us. They don't want us to be totally financially independent. So.
All right. So with that said, and maybe this is a conversation we'll extend to another time, and we're gonna give things in that are enough information for one shot.
Right.
and we'll come back and we'll do another review of what's going to. Trust me, there'll be plenty of information coming up.
Yeah,
And
it's just gonna escalate more and more. And
well, we hope not. We're trying to hold back the storm here and say goodbye to some of our uninvited guests from the extraterrestrial world, as well as those corporations that have been horribly violating humanity, and stay away from our children. And so we're going to do whatever we can to stop all of this. But meanwhile, let's keep everyone's eyes and ears open, and let's continue our discussion. But for now, we're going to end the conversation with this was like the War of the Worlds.
Yeah. But I still believe in the collective consciousness, how we can overcome this and actually create new timelines and change our magnetic field. So it's beyond just education, but empowering people of their ability, their minds, their creativity. We are co-creators.
Great point. That's a great point. Exactly. We're co-creating, and we're sharing information, and we're unified in our conscience, because the mass population speaks to the God source, to the higher courts, I say, the higher beings that hear us. It's the collective that matters. If we all are in agreement that we do not want this, we have power to say no. But if we're uneducated and we're distracted and we're mind controlled, we are not able to pull ourselves out of this. Now is the time to be in agreement that we have chosen the highest potential for humanity. As Andronetalks says, hold on to that highest potential. Don't accept anything less. Speak out and keep your energy focused on the change, or the things of the way humans should be treated, and that the coasts and all people are safe, and that no one is allowed to use weapons like that for against innocent people again. So with that said, Laura, any last thoughts?
I agree. I all of that. In the War of the Worlds, all those idiots were killed anyways. They died from being in the environment.
Right.
All those.
That's of course. I mean, who would create a fire, destroy everything and say, yeah, well, glad you're all gone. Oh, I forgot it's going to affect me. I mean, that's the whole thing. It doesn't, but there's certain species that can thrive, like the draconians, the reptilians, and these greys. They've already been through all this. They've destroyed their own worlds already. That's why they're here. They think they're going to destroy ours. So we're just saying no.
We must be like the roaches. The roaches keep on surviving.
Jeanne, you speak for yourself there.
But there's some ability that they have, some kind of mechanism. They have a way to survive all of this as well. Adapting.
Yeah, we learn from every creature.
Yeah, how Hopi survived the fourth world by going into the caves in the Grand Canyon with the ant people. So, I know we're entering the fifth world. I feel very positive about it, but being aware of what we are encountering, but empowering ourselves even more.
Was that it? That's a Hopi teaching, the ant people, or was that another?
It's a Hopi legend. I mean, I've been working with the Hopis and the Zunis and all that. They survived the fourth world by going in the caves in the Grand Canyon. Right. And they did come out, but they were protected by the ant people.
Well, we see these underground caves all over the world, even under Turkey and in some other places. Yeah, they survived the flood, didn't they? Some of them did.
Yeah, there was a flood, but I think there was other elements going on.
There was a freeze too. Everything got frozen.
We got the glacier. I mean, we're entering our fifth world, according to the Hopis.
So we can go into our inner cave and heal ourselves and help, because not everybody's close to a cave. And my intention is that humanity will thrive, not just survive, but thrive.
I agree. Well said. Well said, both of you. It's an excellent conversation. A lot of information, a lot of things to think about. And I appreciate your interest and concern for the planet and for all those that are listening. We love all of you. Thank you for supporting the my channel for Jessica Ariel Morocco, and also Andronetalks, which is the new show. And we hope to bring in more topics like this. So continue to listen in and share with us, leave comments.
Definitely look forward to the comments and solutions.
Yeah, if you have good comments, then we'll come back and answer to the best of our ability, or have more discussions. Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Laura.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
You have been listening to Andronetalks Radio. Join us on YouTube channel Jessica Ariel Morocco, and visit her website at www.readingsbyariel.com.